flat as a pancake and instantly forgettable. If you had to ask me what I thought of WrestleMania 42 in a nutshell, it would be that. 8 hours of wrestling action performed in front of a fairly soulless crowd at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, and only really one match that felt like it was fitting of the show of shows. Hello everyone, I'm Ben. This is another Veal Talks, and I finished my 8-hour marathon of WrestleMania weekend. I imagine you're in a similar boat to me if you're watching this by now. We've got to the other side, thankfully, mercifully, we've got to the other side of WrestleMania 42. This event that John Cena, the host, described as the most polarising WrestleMania in history, or in other words, the most expensive WrestleMania in history. Somehow against the odds, WWE and TKO Group managed to fill, Allegiant Stadium for 2 nights and get 106,000 people in there combined. That's with a lot of help towards the end with 25% off and buy 3 get 1 free ticketing incentives to finally overcome the crazy ticketing prices that has been blighting fans for the last year in WWE. I want to start off with a positive, and the positive is Night 2's main event. I'll be jumping all over the place in this review, bear with me. Night 2's main event between Roman Reigns and CM Punk was tremendous in my view. I loved it. I loved the energy that they two brought. I loved the old school storytelling. I loved the history. Despite not being a huge fan of the storyline going in, that really had a big match feel. I thought it was befitting of CM Punk finally main event in WrestleMania Night 2. Roman Reigns always delivers on a big stage. And for me, it did genuinely have me on the edge of my seat. I loved it, and it was a really strong way to end WrestleMania Night 2. So I'm going to start with the positive. Hats off to CM Punk and Roman Reigns for that. But let's get into it, shall we? So I'm not going to go every single moment, every single thing, chronological order. I'm going to kind of chip in with bits that jumped out at me from this show. First off, being John Cena being the host of WrestleMania. John Cena is looking increasingly more and more like Vince McMahon by the day. It's almost like he must go into the hair salon now with a picture of Vince from 1992 with his patented toupee and say, I want to look like that, please. So John Cena's in as the host because it's been 3 months since we saw John Cena in a WWE ring, so why not? Pretty much his role at WrestleMania is just to tell us the attendance and say in very Vince McMahon style, welcome to WrestleMania! And that's it. First match of night 1 was the Usos and LA Knight defeating The Vision and ISO Speed. Now, I have to ask my son who ISO Speed is, because I have literally no idea apart from the fact I know who's in the Royal Rumble last year. I asked my son and immediately he's like, yeah, he's the top streamer in the world. I don't even really know what a streamer is, but hey-ho. We are now at a case where we have YouTubers and streamers in the ring at WrestleMania. This match was really the battle of the YouTubers and the streamers. It was all about Logan Paul and ISO Speed, and it was instantly forgettable. It's incredible to think that only 12 months ago, Jey Uso was competing for the world title and winning the world title, and just a couple of years ago, LA Knight was tipped to be the next best thing in WWE. Now they are all jerking the curtain in a pretty meaningless 6-man match, which was literally built to get ISO Speed and Logan Paul trending on social media. Could be worse though. You could be Drew McIntyre. You could have gone from being the WWE champion, looking at a WrestleMania main event mere 6 or 7 weeks ago, to the second match of WrestleMania Saturday. Talk about a graveyard spot. Good grief. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Jacob Fatu. I think Jacob Fatu, I've said this before, could well be the future of the company. You have to forgive my dog for barking. I will persevere, because otherwise I have to start it all over again. So I'll just have a barking dog. Jacob Fatu is the future of WWE in many regards. I love that. I think he's got a great talent, great charisma, and I think there's the world of Jacob Fatu. And I have a lot of time for Drew McIntyre. The two of them together working that match, good grief, you do not want to be match 2 of night 1. And I really felt for them, and it just really showed, like, if you had just built to a fatal 4-way of Drew McIntyre, Jacob Fatu, Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, which for so long looked like what we were heading into for WrestleMania, how different things could have been. The two of them did what they could in this unsanctioned match, which was essentially just a hardcore match. Tables, ladders and chairs, Slim Jim tables, of course. And Jacob Fatu gets the win. So not only does Drew McIntyre not headline WrestleMania, not only is he saddled with the second match on night one, he also loses. Great day to be Drew. Then we had the least well-protected secret in wrestling this month, the return of Paige. Now, I stopped looking at social media mid-afternoon on Friday, thought I'd have a weekend free of spoilers. Pretty much the last thing I did see was all of the news sites saying Paige is going to be back and she's going to replace Nikki Bella in the 8-man tag match. Awesome. So that was spoiled. So that was great. I suspect it was spoiled for everyone who was in the arena that night, judging by the pop, judging by the amount of Paige's back signs that were in the arena. And as soon as we saw Paige back, of course, we knew where this was heading. We knew that this was heading for a tag team title victory. One thing that was rather lovely about this tag title match was the Irresistible Forces, great name for a tag team, by the way, Nia Jax and Lash Legend, coming out sporting white demolition garb as Bill Eadie and Barry Darso looked on. So that was a nice touch. This was your usual kind of rushed affair, getting through as many female competitors as you can in an 8-minute match onto WrestleMania. It obviously went the way we knew it was going to go. And now expect to see a summer of the Brie, Nikki Bella, AJ Lee and Paige all back together, probably doing some Battle of the Four Horsewoman clashes, I would imagine. That was followed by another women's match on WrestleMania Saturday. Becky Lynch defeating AJ Lee for the Women's Intercontinental title. A short match of just over 8 minutes. Felt like the right length to me. Obviously, it was foreshadowed by Michael Cole making a point over and over and over again how much Becky had tapped out to the AJ Lee's finisher. And so we knew where this was going. We knew that it was going to end in a Becky victory, and it was the right call. I still find it crazy to think how, that Becky Lynch was headlining WrestleMania in WrestleMania 35, and here we are, WrestleMania 42, and it still feels like she's finding her feet again after that incredible high point. That took us on to what was the match of the night. Gunther versus Seth Rollins, in my opinion, was the match of the night, but that's not saying much. And the problem I had with this was, I had no problem with the match itself. The match was fine. You got two great talents there. They were given time to work with, almost 18 minutes to work with. The problem you have, and this was endemic throughout all of WrestleMania, was there was no build to it, or there was so little build to it. It genuinely felt like two of your biggest names in the company right now were literally just slapped together at the last minute in a kind of make do amend thing, because you couldn't do the match that you wanted to do originally. We all know that it was supposed to be Seth Rollins and Bron Breakker. I think originally there was talk of it being a Rey Mysterio and Gunther retirement match, or potentially it was even the Gunther AJ Styles retirement match was tipped originally and booked. We get these two together and they tell a story, but the problem is we're not compelled to really get engaged with it because there's nothing on the line. There are no stakes. You've got the guy who is the career killer, who has been doing this systematically with Goldberg, with John Cena, with AJ Styles over the last 6 months. And you have him at WrestleMania not retiring someone, which just defies belief. And it particularly defies belief with what happens on night 2 in a moment. The whole thing kind of comes off the rails when Bron Breakker returns, and that kind of leads to the end of it. Bron Breakker spears Seth Rollins. That helps Gunther to get the win. Tainted victory for Gunther, so he doesn't even come out of this looking particularly strong. Really just set up to do Seth Rollins and Bron Breakker. And you're thinking, if Bron Breakker is healthy enough to run down that ramp and hit a couple of spears like that, maybe they should have just found a way to make the planned match work after all. I don't think anyone really benefited from this, but particularly not Gunther, who could have and should have come out of WrestleMania looking stronger than ever. We then had Liv Morgan defeating Stephanie Vaquer for the Women's World Championship in a short match, 6:50. Allegedly, it was short because both women were still nursing injuries and repercussions of past injuries, so they kept it short. The thing for me, and I don't know if this was the acoustics in the stadium, I don't know if you picked up on this watching at home, but Liv Morgan's lip sync into her new song Trouble seemed like it was about 2 seconds off, which really made me struggle with the whole performance. It seemed like she wasn't quite in line with what she was singing. I noticed it later with Rhea Ripley the following day. I don't know if like the sound was off by a second because of the size of the stadium or what it was, but yeah, I mean, this was basically the Liv Morgan night. It was her debuting this song of hers, which is an earworm which I would like to get out of my head as quickly as possible. And of course, Liv, who won the 2026 Royal Rumble, goes on to beat Stephanie McCurt, is the new women's champion, celebrates with Dirty Dom afterwards. They do the obligatory fireworks behind, and off we go, happy families. Which leads us to the main event. Now, I've recorded a standalone video about this, which I dropped on the channel earlier, because I've asked if this was the worst WrestleMania main event in history. That video talks much more about specifically why. Suffice to say, Pat McAfee's involvement made no sense whatsoever in either the lead up to or the payoff of this match. Jelly Roll was involved for God knows what reason. Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes neither could decide who was the heel or who was the babyface. The ending of this match was booked to oblivion, and you came out of it scratching your head saying, what the hell did I just witness? And that really wasn't very good. When you think of the years and the talent that's involved in that match between Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, and you think about how simple the story was of mentor and student, boy, that one came off the rails in a hurry, and it is a great example of what happens when there are too many cooks in the creative kitchen. Awful, awful way to end night one. Honourable mention on night one to the Hall of Fame inductees coming out to the stage, and particularly to the family of Sid, particularly Gunnar Yudi coming out and having to clap as headliner Stephanie McMahon made her way in mere hours after Gunnar had called out WWE for being disrespectful as hell for the treatment of Sid receiving the Legacy Award. So that was an awkward moment to watch. But that was WrestleMania Night 1. I came away from WrestleMania Saturday just thinking, why, oh why, oh why is WrestleMania a two-night event? Because this is now probably the third or fourth year in a row where WrestleMania Saturday has paled so much in comparison to WrestleMania Sunday. The card is stacked always for WrestleMania Sunday. The crowd is hyped so much more for WrestleMania Sunday. It just calls into question why you don't just have a 5-hour-long WrestleMania featuring your 9 or 10 top matches and be done with it. Apart from, of course, the cash grab at the gate. And we all know that's what it's all about for TKO. So night 2 kicks off, and it is a more raucous crowd. You've got another 5,000 people in attendance, as John Cena reports, but really, you can always tell there's that certain edge to WrestleMania Sunday. Night 2 kicks off with Femi versus Brock Lesnar, the battle of the heavyweights. They go 450. It was never going to be a long match. Femi gets the win, the very popular win, and the expected win. What was less expected is what happens afterwards. Now, there's been lots of speculation online that this was unscripted. I don't believe it for a second because this is a WWE and I don't think anything of that magnitude could even possibly happen that was unscripted. I'm sure there's a lot more here. But at the end of the match, Brock Lesnar takes off his pads. I'm losing my words here. Takes off his pads, takes off his shoes, leaves his boots in the ring and ostensibly retires. So Brock Lesnar, for all intents and purposes, is done with WWE. And as a thank you, Brock, chant rain down, I'm just there watching this whole thing thinking, I can't ever believe he came back after everything that went down 2 years ago. And I remember when he was brought back last summer and I thought, this is so distasteful. And now he's getting a hero's farewell and no doubt a Hall of Fame induction next year. I circle back to what I said about Gunther, because if you are going to retire, then would it not make sense for Gunther to also retire Brock Lesnar as you are the career killer and that is your whole gimmick? I don't know. I think it's amazing for Femi. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Femi wins the 2027 Royal Rumble, headlines WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia and is world champion this time next April. He has got it. That was his crowning moment. Michael Cole saying he's the next big thing, the next best thing. Femi is the future of the company, and obviously Brock Lesnar putting him over fair and square in the middle of the ring proves that. So a big moment to kick off WrestleMania Sunday. followed by the first ladder match to take place at WrestleMania since WrestleMania 32, when Matt Cardona and Zack Ryder scaled the dizzy heights to win the Intercontinental title. This one had Penta, Javon Evans, Dragon Lee, JD McDonough, Rusev and Rey Mysterio. I had to read them off the screen because, quite frankly, there's so many people. And it's your usual Money in the Bank ladder match, fusion of big death spots and crazy moves. There's my dog barking again. I'm just going to go with it. Penta ultimately gets a win. I must admit, I thought this was going to be Javon Evans' night. I did think that this was going to be the night that he became Intercontinental Champion. Great for Penta. Great showing for him. Penta came in with so much energy and fanfare behind him last January. It does feel at times that has halted. So really good for him to get that IC title win. And of course, that Intercontinental title match is always a feel-good crowd popper for all the big spots. Next match was a match, and I recorded a video about this recently, about Sammy Hogan, the Sammy Hogan chants turning on Sami Zayn. Sammy obviously goes into this match as the heel against Trick Williams. Trick Williams is there with Lil Yachty. Yeah, that's a real favourite of mine. Obviously, I know all of Lil Yachty's discography. I'm sure he's great. But yeah, Trick Williams gets the win over Sami Zayn in a pretty formulaic match where Sammy is occupying the subtle heel role and slowly building on that. And Trick Williams, who comes down with an unbelievably long flowing cape, ultimately gets the very popular win. I was expecting Carmelo Hayes to pop up at some point, given the storyline. Surprised that he didn't have any involvement at WrestleMania, but hey, there you go. The Demon, Finn Balor, was next against Dominic Mysterio, getting the win in a street fight. Now, again, going back to the lack of surprises, this is what I said about Paige earlier. If you're going to have the Demon, and if you've already sold your tickets to the show, maybe, just maybe, save the Demon back and have it come out as a crowd-popping surprise. Because I can't imagine that if he'd come out as a Demon without an announcement, how much the place would have gone wild and how much more it would have meant. I mean, at this stage, the Demon is just really, you bring him out of his face paint every couple of years at WrestleMania and he does his thing. You all know where it's going to go. If he's dressed as the Demon, he wins, which does beg the question, why don't you dress as the Demon all the time if you're Finn Balor? Dominic Mysterio, tremendous entrance of the night, king of the luchadors. I mean, I find it crazy. Having been at Clash at the Castle in Cardiff when he turned heel, I find it amazing to think how far Dominic Mysterio has come in just a few years. That guy is incredible. He's just a heat magnet. And when he does eventually turn face, it's going to be something else. So the Demon gets the expected and popular win in that street fight. Which leads us to the penultimate night of WrestleMania 42. Rhea Ripley defeating Jade Cargill for the Women's Championship. So this is, if you're counting, this is now the 5th title change that's happened at WrestleMania. 10 minutes they go. Jade Cargill, this is really the big payoff from the Jade Cargill experiment that's been going on the last couple of years. This is her proving ground to have this match against Rhea Ripley. This is a big money match. Now, we know Rhea Ripley has been battling with some health stuff recently. She's been very open about speaking about her struggles, which I applaud her for. This match did what it needed to do. It was obviously going to go Rhea's way. Jade, though, to her credit, carried that just as well with Rhea. The match was believable. They looked like two stars in there, and the right person won in Rhea Ripley. And then that leads us to our main event. And as I say, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, you know, it had that big match feel. It had what you want from WrestleMania. You know, it had some, you know, they did their best to build some story around it, even though the two of them together did seem a little bit illogical when it was first booked. I was pumped going in. I genuinely, despite the fatigue over WrestleMania setting in by this point, I genuinely enjoy this match. I enjoyed the story told. Roman going over was the right call. And it will be really interesting to see what a genuine babyface Roman Reigns can do now. He has said that he's no longer a part-timer. He is full-time committed. We'll see what happens. But Roman Reigns on top form as a babyface going into this new season for WWE will be very interesting to see. The other lovely outtake that came from WrestleMania was Bianca Belair coming out and surprising the world to share the news that her and Montez Ford are pregnant, and that she showed her baby bump off, and that got a great reaction. So that was nice to see. But yeah, that was WrestleMania. I've kind of whizzed through it very, very quickly. And you have to forgive for kind of dog in the background and all the nonsense. That is just family life and trying to do this stuff. But I kind of came away from WrestleMania just being like, yeah, like, with the exception of that main event on night 2, I genuinely don't think I'm going to remember any of these matches in a month or two. And that's crazy because so many WrestleManias have lived in my mind and my memory for decades and decades and are indelibly etched in there. This WrestleMania, much like WrestleMania 41, just did not feel special. It felt like it could have been any other B show throughout the year. And therein lies the problem, I think, now with where WWE is with the WrestleMania brand and its dilution. And I think if that's what we get from 2 years in Las Vegas, this very, very soulless stadium where I don't know what it is about the acoustics of the sound, but it just feels so flat as a pancake. And then we've got the prospect of Saudi Arabia next year, and we all know what the Saudi Arabia crowds are like. The talent have got their work cut out for them. And that's the thing I want to say to kind of wrap up this video is nothing I'm saying that's critical about this is critical of the talent. All of the talent, as they always do in WWE, had their working boots on, came out and did their best on the night. WrestleMania 42 was lacking really from a lack of really, really strong angles, emotional storytelling, and matches and tandems and everything that we really cared about. Like I went into the show not really particularly caring about any match, and because of that, the stakes weren't there, and I didn't feel massively invested. And as a result, whoever won or whoever lost didn't really mean that much. And there is the problem. WWE, as always, coming out of WrestleMania, now has its work cut out for it. We all know that this is the lull period. We all know that Survivor Series to WrestleMania is when wrestling is at its hottest. The road to WrestleMania, everything after that is a hard slog as interest wanes over the summer. And in the post-WrestleMania press conference, the very vocal crowd were behind Roman Reigns and co, shouting FTKO, FTKO. Now, we know that they've talked about the vocal minority. I don't think it will make the slightest bit of difference, but something needs to change. What that something is, I don't know, but creatively, WWE needs to do something now to start to readdress this balance and to restate their place as the #1 wrestling company in the world. To have 2 back-to-back WrestleManias disappoint the fan base is a position I can't ever remember the company being in. I genuinely can't remember a time where I've come away from 2 WrestleManias feeling completely like I am with this. Like literally, I've watched that show, it's done, I'm recording this video, and then I'm moving on. And usually I come away from WrestleMania with a lot of memories and wanting to watch that show again and again and again. With the exception of Punk versus Reigns, I can't imagine there is a single match from WrestleMania 42 that I will ever be inclined to revisit. And I certainly won't be rewatching Danhausen and a bunch of little Danhausens carrying The Miz out of an arena. Good grief. So that was WrestleMania. That was my honest review. Not a fan. Would quite happily have those 8 hours back. They're gone now. It was habitual viewing. I almost didn't watch it, and at the last moment I decided to do it because my friend came to stay, and I thought, let's just do it. But amazing to think where it's gone from 2 years ago, where I was so hyped to be there in Philadelphia to see it live. 2 years on, I could barely be bothered to watch it for free on Netflix. But at least we got it for free in the UK. Spare a thought for those in the US that had to pay for a privilege on USBN. My heart is with you. I would love to hear from you guys. What did you think to WrestleMania 42? Sorry for my ramblings today. Sorry for the dog. It is what it is. Let me know what you thought of WrestleMania 42. What was your favourite match? What did you dislike? Do you agree with my verdict? Have I talked complete nonsense? I'm open to it all. For me, WrestleMania 42 on balance was one pretty sizable flop. Do you agree, or did you come out of the show actually enjoying it? Let me know what you think. Drop a note in the comments. I'm Ben. This is Veal Talks. Usually I'm hosting the podcast Wrestling Life Online, so do check that out. We've got over 100 interviews on there on the other YouTube channel, and I'll be back soon for more talk on this channel. See you soon. Bye.